All right. I am so excited for this episode. I have someone really near and dear to our hearts for us at CEO Finance Academy. It's one of our own coaches. Her name is Sahira Lopez. She has an incredible business mind, and I'm really excited to dive into her story. Sahira, to have you share about kind of your journey. And I just want to first say thank you so much for taking time to do this.
Absolutely. I'm glad to be here.
I'm so excited. I've been really fortunate to have Sahira as part of our team. And Sahira, you have an incredible business story, and I think it's something that I'd love to share with the world. You've had such a deep experience building a very successful dental practice, and I'm really excited to dive in. Most of our audience is small business owners and facing challenges that you've gone through and made it through, and I know you can relate to. And I can't wait to dive into some of those. But I'd love to just start with Sahira as the person. Sahira, were you always the type that you thought you were going to run a business one day?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And that's probably why my journey is so interesting.
Yeah.
Had I know that I was going to be a business owner, I might have read more books and be more disciplined about learning stuff before going at it, things like that. Um, I was a young mother,
Okay.
and I was basically stay-at-home mom. I was studying from home, actually,
Yeah.
doing online schooling, while my husband was quite frustrated of his work. And that is what sparked the interest of saying, you know what, maybe we need to fix this. And the way to fix this is by opening up your own business.
The
Little
solution
did
to
I
everything,
know,
right?
little did
Yeah.
I know. But I have a daughter. She's my only one. She's 17. A lot of my life revolves around her. She came into this world to give me purpose, and it's been such a wonderful gift to have
Yeah.
her as my child.
Oh
And
man.
I'm pretty active. I like running. I like cycling. I like skiing. I like being on a horse. Anything outdoors. I like hunting. Anything that is out in the sun, I like. So yeah,
Yeah.
and today one of my passions is to help others, and help business owners in particular.
Yeah. Well, I'm super curious. What were you studying for before you guys opened the business? Like, what was the plan before starting the business?
So I was a pre-med student.
Oh my
So
gosh. Oh,
I was finishing my fourth year of biology. Yeah, I was taking, organic chemistry too,
yeah.
calculus, physical and, anatomy.
Not easy courses. As a physical therapist
Right,
myself, not easy
right,
courses. Yeah.
right. All that stuff, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yes,
Oh man.
yes. And then that quickly changed to business administration.
Okay. Okay. So you were doing that. I would love to hear this transition because I think, the story for a lot of entrepreneurs, small business owners is, they have an idea or a life circumstance that happens. And, there are plenty of people who I just kind of always knew they were going to do something. But I think for a lot of us, it's more circumstantial and something happens. So how can you walk us through a little bit of like, how did you guys finally, or you especially, like, how did you decide to make the pivot? Like, hey, I'm going to stop doing the pre-med route and let's do this. Like, let's go for it. Cause I'm sure it wasn't, one night, yeah, let's do it. Or maybe it was, but I'm guessing there's probably some back and forth decision making on your end. I'm just curious, kind of that journey.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. After you're in your fourth year
Yeah.
of finishing a degree, right? So
Like
it's
that close, like so close.
exactly, you're that close. And however, so you're in the last year of finishing your degree, and then you are also just venturing into buying a business, acquiring a practice is what we were doing. And the moment we acquired that practice, which was June 2007, that moment the decision was taken of, okay, you have a medical degree, I need a business degree. That's that was the and when you're
Yeah.
young, wild, and ignorant, you make decisions like that. You make decisions on the fly.
Yeah. You don't know what you don't know
Right.
yet. You're just like,
Yeah.
yeah, okay. We'll figure it out.
Correct. You're like, okay, you have the medical degree, I'm going for the business degree, and this is how this is gonna work.
Yeah.
And we all know that, business school only teaches you so much, right?
Yeah. I'd love to,
Yeah.
because you've mentioned to this before though. I think if you're okay with me sharing this a little bit, was, there was kind of I don't know if it was verbally agreed or kind of an unspoken thing of like, your partner wanted to really just do the medical side. And it's like, you were like, okay, I'll take on all the business stuff, which is a massive responsibility, right? Of like, how did you feel like just essentially committing to, okay, I'm going to be the one to spearhead this with not really a ton of business background, right?
Right, absolutely. And I think that's what made the decision of, okay, I got to shift gears here. I cannot
Yeah.
study biology anymore. It's really fun. It's really cool. If you love science, you know what I'm talking about, Will.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can just get lost in that world.
Oh man. Yeah.
But I was like, okay, I gotta stop this. Now it's real world. I need applicable knowledge instantly.
Yeah.
So that is, I looked into University of Florida,
Okay.
and which was one of the most renowned programs here in the state where we live, which is Florida.
Yeah.
And I applied, and they accepted me. So
Mm.
I would go up to. We're based in Orlando, and I would go up to Gainesville once a month to
Wow.
pursue the degree. Given that I was only taking core, right, core
Sure. Sure.
classes by that point, because I had already had all the credits from
Yeah.
the first 2 years of biology. But that was the deal. The deal was,
Okay.
I am going to be the clinician, and you are going to take part. You're going to take on the business side. And college was amazing, especially their marketing program was
Yeah.
their marketing classes were really superb. But that wasn't enough, right? I became an avid reader. I was reading about two books a month, and then
Wow.
not only reading them, but how I was going to apply that knowledge into the dental field, into the business that we had just acquired.
Yeah.
And shortly after, we hit rock bottom. So we acquired the business in 2007. And Will, you I don't know if you remember, but do you know what happened
Oh
in
yeah.
2008?
Yeah. The recession was coming. Yeah. Yeah. Right around the corner. Yeah. Yeah. I
Big
graduated college right around that time. And it was like, man, it was so brutal trying to find work. Yeah.
So 6 months in, we had acquired a business that, by the way, given what I know now, given that I've learned how to read income statements and balance sheets
Yeah.
and cash flow statements, I would have never paid what we paid to acquire that business.
Yeah.
So that was a big lesson.
Yeah.
And you'll hear me say when I speak, I really try not to call things mistakes. I try,
Yeah.
yes, they are great lessons. And in business, lessons cost money.
They do.
That is, yes,
Yeah.
lessons
You
cost,
just hope not super expensive, but they do.
yes, lessons cost a lot of money. So we acquired this business that we paid way more than what it was, the true value of it.
Yeah.
And 2008 came with the recession in full force.
Yeah.
And so we first tried to hire an attorney to get our money back from the acquisition, at least part of it.
Yeah.
And that didn't go through because we didn't have enough money to afford the attorney. So that was put to rest quickly. And 2008 came, and you'd be surprised. There were $7,000 in the account,
Yeah.
and $40,000 to be paid in overhead expenses. So it was like a 911.
Yeah.
And this might surprise you. The first thing we did was okay, we were in a crossroads, right? We were like, okay, do we give up
Yeah.
or do we make it work? And we decided that we were going to make it work. And when we decided that, we started selling off personal things. So we
Mm.
downsized to a car. We rented the house we lived in and moved into like a 1-bedroom apartment.
Yeah.
And and we hired a coach.
Mm.
That's what we did.
Yeah.
We said,
Any,
okay,
was it a dental specific business
it
coach?
was, it
Okay.
was, it
Yeah.
was, it
Okay.
was in the dental industry, and it wasn't a super known coach.
Yeah.
It wasn't and we had different coaches in our journey, but it was one that we could afford.
Yep.
And when we looked into his resume and into what he had done for others, we called about 5 of the references
Yeah.
and clients that he had worked with, and they all had great things to say. So we sold stuff. We came up with some money to be able to cover our overhead and to cover that coach.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
And that saved us.
Yeah.
Having the humility
Mm.
to accept that we needed help
Yeah.
from someone that knew more
Yeah.
at the right time
Yeah.
saved us.
In a time when you could have easily said, we don't have the money, you know,
Absolutely.
you could have, and I think that's a real thing a lot of people are facing is, I feel like I just don't have the money. And I think that's an incredible story. You're probably used to a certain lifestyle at that point. You have a house, multiple cars, and essentially bet on yourselves that we're going to go make this happen at whatever it takes. I mean, I just think that's a really admirable story, and just goes to show you can be in a tough spot. Like, you don't have to be great at math to know 7,000 in the bank and you owe 40,000. Like, not a great, nobody really wants to be facing that, but you can find a way to make it happen. Um, I want to ask, so I think some incredible lessons there, which is one, you can always transform yourself. You can always learn a new skill. You can always go, you can be resourceful, right? You might not have resources, but you can become resourceful. And I think that's what I take away from that is figure it out. We'll go figure out what we can do. I'm curious. So obviously I'm guessing it's not a like overnight shift into, 2 weeks later, things are just perfect. I'm curious on your end, since you're the one taking on a lot of the business responsibilities, what helped you early on taking over a business? I think sometimes there's a benefit to not being able to provide the service yourself, meaning you weren't a dentist. As far as I know, you're not a dentist, right? And so you can't do the fulfillment, you can't do the service. And I think sometimes it's really tough for business owners who are doing both, running the business and the service, like especially if you're starting out. It's so hard to separate yourself from seeing just the business side. So I'm curious on your end, was it helpful to not be able to be in the trenches of doing the service, do you think? Or do you feel like it would have been more beneficial to, actually been a dentist in that case?
Not really. I
Okay.
actually think we made a great team because I was not in the fulfilling
Yeah.
side of the clinical. Um, However, I was very in tune with the clinical side.
Yeah.
And we both were with both sides. I went to every clinical training,
Wow.
and
Really?
my part would come and listen to the hours of the books. I'm an expert at doing book summaries, bullet
Hey,
points. Like,
yeah.
this is, you don't need to read the book, but this is what you need to learn, because when you see me doing this or that, I need you to know that this is where it came from. And it's not from, ignorant
Yeah.
Sahira that has never run a business. It came from this very knowledgeable person that wrote this book. And there
Yeah.
is data support
Yeah.
the efforts, or the investment, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so he became really good at reading book summaries and understanding my role of growth.
Yeah.
The growth mindset It's odd. It's it's sacrificial, and
Mm,
it's a dreamer, and it's resilient, and the fulfillment side is big hearted, and
mm,
doesn't really almost want to know about numbers
yeah,
and P&Ls. And so that allowed us to have a true big hearted clinician
mm,
that truly saw the patient needs rather than dollar signs.
yeah.
And when I say that, I'm sure you understand
Oh
what
yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
um
I think we all know it. If you're in a service-based business, right? You're close with your clients. Yeah,
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 yeah, yeah. So it really created that balance that truly made us really successful in the way I handle business and the way he handled clinical care.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm I think that's just really cool to me that you guys both dove into each side and I see now, having been in business for a while, how important that is of you understanding the product. Your clinicians are the product, right? I know you in dentistry there are also certain physical products like implants or you know uh Invisalign types. I know they're actual physical products, but really the product is the service of dentistry. And so being able to understand that so you can wrap your head around a topic I want to dive into here, which is sort of the marketing and sales side, because I'm super curious. When you guys acquired the practice that you acquired, were there built-in marketing and sales systems? Were you jumping into something that was already churning really, really well, and you just kind of felt like you had to optimize what was already going on? Or did you walk into a scenario where it wasn't really a system and you had to build one? I'm kind of curious, what was that like when you jumped in? Because it's always the first thing is you have to keep people coming in. We have to get clients and customers. You can be the most amazing dentist in the world, but if no one ever talks about you, it's no good. So I'm curious, when you guys acquired it, what was that like jumping in to? Was there an existing marketing and sales system? Did you have to kind of create one? I'd love to hear kind of how that went.
So that was one of the reasons we wanted to sue.
Oh, okay.
because
I'm
because the
guessing not because it was
acquisition.
so good. I'm guessing it's not because it was so amazing.
Correct.
Yeah.
There was none.
Okay.
And the goodwill that we were supposedly buying, it was patients. It was active patients
Yeah.
of the practice. Well, we walked into a ghost town, Will.
Oh my gosh.
It
As in,
was
as in when you say that, meaning like nobody, like clients had left?
nobody, the
Oh.
patients on the schedule, they had not come to they were just like ghost, really. And when
Wow.
we first got there and I remember, I will never forget the first day we got there, the only two staff members that we were acquiring as well with the practice quit. They walked out the door immediately.
Wow. Wow.
And then we had one patient showed up, but it was a walk-in. It wasn't a patient that was on the schedule.
Yeah.
And when my partner went to go put gloves on, there were no gloves. So we had to go to Publix next door and buy gloves.
Oh my God.
So that was something that was also part of the things that we were buying, right? The supplies.
Yeah.
The sensor for the x-ray had also disappeared, so we had no sensor. And then the rest of the patients, talking about marketing, I started to call them because let's say a patient was scheduled at 9 and it was 9:05 and the patient didn't show
Yeah.
up. I was calling, I was like, hello, this is Sahira from the Gentle Dentistry is what it was called back
Yeah.
then. And they were like, I haven't been there for more than 2 years. Why are you calling me? I was like,
And they
oh
were
my,
they were on the schedule though?
they
Like
were
they were,
on the schedule.
oh my goodness.
I was
Wow.
like, oh my goodness. So non-existent, no
Wow.
existent. To the contrary, we were having an empty
Yeah.
schedule. And so a couple of things that was a big lesson and that saved us as well. Um, we had acquired one of the reasons why we acquired that specific practice. It was because it was right next door to Publix,
Mm.
which is a big
Oh yeah,
supermarket,
yeah.
a big box supermarket here in Florida. And in addition to that, it had been a dental practice in that location for 18 years. And in the corner of that location was a Blockbuster, which was also so the
Yeah.
supermarket and Blockbuster, very well known properties. So we knew that part of the investment was the location, just kind of like
Gotcha. Yeah,
securing
yeah,
that
yeah.
location. And so we basically, for the first 3 months, we basically only saw walk-ins.
Yeah.
Anybody else had nothing, they didn't want to know about the practice. They had bad
Uh,
experiences. The doctor was in and out, so they would get canceled all the time. They were
mm,
done.
yeah.
But the walk-ins were still was still, so at that, so for the first three
Yeah.
months, oh my gosh, we were seeing maybe 10 new
Yeah.
patients a month, about
Yeah.
10 new patients.
Yeah. Well, it's just all walk-in, right? Like there's no
Right,
word
right.
of
It was
mouth or
just the people that were walking
yeah.
by, and we were like, oh, let me go to the dentist. And
Got
then
it.
immediately after that, then we started looking into what our marketing budget was going to be.
Yeah.
But, like I just said, we had acquired a business that had no assets. So we had to go and buy things that we didn't have.
Right.
So,
Right.
our working capital that we had for marketing basically was
Right.
all consumed in just getting the stuff we needed to run the thing.
Yeah. Well, and not only are you fighting against no clients, no essentially a contact list that isn't really active or existing, but also having to fight against a poor reputation from the past that sounds like, it's hard to know if you're not in that area and don't talk to people. So curious, do you rebrand at that point? Is there something
We
where is
did.
it so
We
bad
did.
that you okay,
Yes.
okay. So
Yes.
you
So
okay.
we rebranded instantly,
Yeah.
got a hold of the local chamber of commerce, and I'm an extrovert.
Yeah.
I love people. Um, so I immediately started networking and making
Yeah.
friends with chiropractors and the people in our plaza. And soon enough, I was having local business owners come in and meet the clinician, which
Ah,
she's a rock star.
yeah.
So soon enough, the best chiropractor in town was our patient.
Yeah.
The best ENT in town was our patient. The
Mm,
best orthodontist in town was our patient.
got
Um,
it.
so really targeting the mayor was our patient.
Wow.
So that was my first idea was, okay, who is important in this town, and I need
Yeah.
to make them my patients. Now I don't need to know them, they need to be my patient.
Oh
um,
man.
and I knew that my partner was an excellent clinician.
Yeah.
So when you are offering a service, you really need to pay attention that you are really working to be the best at it.
Yeah. Yeah.
The quality of your service has to match the marketing, basically, um,
Yes. Yeah.
and the word of mouth of others. So
Yeah.
so that was that was the only marketing I could afford, Will.
No, and I think that's great. I think too, if you're, yeah, what I take from that is, especially if you're a local based business, but it could apply to any businesses. What are those key strategic relationships you can build? And, the way we described it there was it all happened so fast, but I'm sure it took time of you going to meet people, networking. I'm not sure if you were doing events or things like that, but that's a key thing in any kind of businesses,
Yep.
coming up with a key strategic list of relationships that you can build of people who have influence over other people, right?
Yeah.
In your community. And so I think that's really, really, yeah, just a great piece of advice. And it, it's kind of what was left on the table in terms of budget wise to do.
Yes.
But I'm really curious. So things obviously start to grow. You guys survive. You obviously survive that dark period. You buy this business, not what you think it is. Have to really start from scratch all over. As things stabilize, which obviously I know we're leaving out a huge gap of how that comes about, but let's just say as things stabilize, I'm super curious for you, Sahira, when did you first start to feel some comfort in like where you guys were in the business? Meaning maybe each month you weren't as worried, like, are we going to bring in as much revenue as we need? Like how long did that take for you guys to get to a place where you sort of felt like, hey, we're not drowning or like, suffering through this. We're actually like creating a positive, we're feeling good about what we're doing. I know comfort's always a hard thing, might not be the right word, but how long did it take for you to guys finally feel like, hey, we're cruising a little bit here?
That was at year 3.
Year
At the
3.
at the end of year 3.
Okay.
At the end of year 3, we had a clear business plan of what we were heading towards.
Yeah.
And our why, and why were we doing this, and I think that's so important for any business, because in those first 3, it's very sacrificial. And if you don't have a big enough why, and your only why is money, it's very rare that you're going to make it through, because it's just not enough. It's just not enough. So within those 3 years, we really, and going through those struggles and obstacles really made us even more tune into the why we were doing this. And I suffered from dental phobia myself for many years as a teenager, and to me,
it's got to be up there as one of the bigger. It's got to be up there of like top 10 fears of people. Going to the dentist. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So to me, more than financial freedom and more looking for how I will retire and my exit strategy, it was really about how can I prevent other teenagers or young adults going through what I went through with my dental phobia. Like how can I make a dent on that?
Yeah.
And so the practice was created and centered on thinking about those people. That was our target. Our target was people that have dental anxiety and dental phobia, and how we could educate them to overcome it and have more fear of actually losing their teeth than of the dentist.
It's a good spin on it. Yeah. Like I'm much more afraid of losing my teeth than I am going and getting them fixed. Yeah. And there are plenty of people out there who would rather lose their teeth than go to the dentist. I'm
right.
Yeah.
So, it was really a mindset of, instead of thinking how we were going to retire and how much we were going to retire with, it was more of always of how are we going to impact our community? How are we going to impact, the 2 miles that are around us? It's not even that huge territory. We really wanted to dominate 2 miles. And that was our marketing strategy. We did not spend $1 in marketing that was not out of those 2 miles.
Wow.
In a circle from the practice. And as the business grew, that changed into 3 miles, 4 miles. At the end there, we are at a 5-mile mark. But our focus never changed. We are going to dominate this area and saturate it and be known. People are going to open up their kitchen cabinets and they're going to find us. They're going to go to their car and they're going to find us. They're going to go to the gym and they're going to find us. They're going to go to the nail salon and they're going to find us. They're going to go to the baseball game of their child and they're going to find the
Mhm.
same clinic. So basically there was no escaping Europe, dentist, right? Which was the
Yeah.
company name. Yeah.
Yeah. I am curious, was that the mission aspect, the why of that part? Did that come like as soon as you were opening or as soon as you were buying the clinic, or did that come a little bit after, like you got your feet wet of like, we can actually do this? Okay, now I've found there's different things, different stages. Sometimes people go into it with, I started this business because I had this why. And sometimes it's, I had this idea for a business. I wanted to work for myself. And then I found my why along the way. Curious for you guys, was it you knew right away, or did it kind of come along as you were building?
I didn't really know right away, to be honest with you. The first right away was my partner's um, not being content with being an associate and not being able to practice the dentistry he wanted to.
Yeah.
So that was the first why. The first why
Yeah.
was, listen, we can't, this is not good. You feel that you're being unethical and where you're working at, and you can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
This cannot, there's no way we're going to be able to live like this in long term.
Yeah.
That was the first why. And then as we got in it, and I got more into it, I started remembering my issues with dentistry. And I was like, you know what, this is, yes, I'm gonna go through this because I need this.
Yeah.
I need
Yeah.
this for myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, to be honest with you, after year 3 that we had created that safe environment for people with dental anxiety, and I felt really good about it, then it was more about, like I said, becoming a place where people could come and realize their dreams.
Mm.
And in that, I'm not only talking about patients, but I'm talking about team members.
Yeah.
So, in that journey, we hired young team members that bought houses, paid off, became debt free, gave away cars,
Yeah.
had babies, had 529s established, saving college funds for the babies.
Yeah.
So it's very fun when you're doing things and impact and having impact on others.
Oh, yeah, I can only I'm sure it just makes you incredibly proud, and all that hard work that you're putting in, is I know there's let's not, I don't want to lie and say that there's not a selfish component to business as well, which is to provide that freedom for yourself as well. But I think as you grow, and being able to hand opportunities to other people is so powerful. And part of kind of what we do with CEO Finance Academy is, if you don't know your numbers, it's really hard to be able to give more, because you kind of feel at a lack for yourself. And one of the hardest times to give is when you feel like you lack for yourself. And I think that's really cool to hear the journey that you guys went on. I think also for business owners to hear, I think there's still plenty of business owners who's 5 years, 10 years in the game where they think, I don't really truly know my why. It's still working, but I don't know my why. And a great lesson is, it can kind of come along as you are figuring it out. Like you can always kind of reassess and do that. I do want to ask you here, because you've we'll kind of get into in a little bit about how you've grew the practice to where it got to, and really excited to chat about that. But I'm curious, at what point, because this podcast in particular, we talk a lot about financial topics as well. How did you become essentially the financial person for the business? I'm guessing that had to start pretty early on. I'm not sure if that initial dental coach had an impact, or business school at least gave you some foundations. Maybe it was just, I had to figure it out on the fly. How did you get into that role? Did you like that role, or did you have to become someone who had to force yourself to essentially enjoy that role?
So I've always been a little bit of a nerd.
Okay.
I love learning.
Yeah.
I think learning is so much fun. Anything, about any subject. If you're learning, if your brain is receiving information that it has never heard about,
Yeah.
regardless if you agree with it or not, it's information.
Yeah.
It's data. It's facts.
Yeah.
I'm not too excited about opinions and fiction, but
Yeah.
when it comes to data and black and white, I love it. So I felt I was bookkeeper from day one.
Okay. Yeah.
So
And the good thing with
I,
numbers is it's all black and white. It's very, there's
yep,
no,
yep,
yeah.
yep. I will
Yeah.
never forget. When I was, and I don't even remember. I think the accountant had told me, you're gonna need QuickBooks, and just like in passing. And I told my partner, I said, listen, we need to go to Best Buy and buy QuickBooks.
I was probably in the software packets back then. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah.
And he's like, okay, whatever,
Yeah, I get it. Yeah. Yeah.
It's one of the checklist things, right?
Yeah.
This is one of the. So we bought QuickBooks, and then you put the thing in the computer, you download the software, and then you're like, oh my
No.
God, what is this? So I took a course. I don't know,
Yeah.
it was like a $99 course for
Yeah.
for intro to QuickBooks.
Yeah.
And that took me off to start QuickBooks. And it was an intro course, but it gave
Yeah.
me enough to figure out all the rest of it as I followed along. And to be honest with you, I enjoyed it a lot. And I was the bookkeeper for, my goodness, I did not delegate the books until 7 years in.
Yeah. Yeah. And at what kind of, just to give people an idea, what kind of revenue were you guys doing at that point when you delegated? Like,
At that point, we were at 4.6.
yeah. So we're not talking like we're doing, $30,000 a month and you're doing your books.
No, no,
4.6
yeah,
million, you're doing all the
million,
books. Yeah.
yes.
Okay. Okay. You pretty much,
Yeah,
you taught yourself a graduate degree in bookkeeping by that point, I assume.
right. And not only that, but there had been business expansions and equipment and depreciation, and granted, I had a really good team with the accountant. The accountant helped me a lot to do journal entries and to figure out certain things that
Yeah.
I'm like, how do I do this? And it would,
Yeah.
and it was just a phone call away. So that helped a lot. And then there's always, with bookkeeping, there's always a line that is called ask your accountant.
Some people put miscellaneous, but it probably should say ask the accountant. Yeah. I think
And
that's good.
that was my lifesaver. And I would handle those, if not in a monthly basis, in a quarterly basis. I was handling the ask my accountant
Yeah.
line. Yeah.
I'm curious then, because for context for people, I guess we should jump to this real quick. Sahira, when you so we should ask, are you still in the dental business? And at what point, if you're not in it, when you left, or if you did leave, where was it at kind of business growth wise, so people get an idea of kind of how big you guys built this to?
Yeah, absolutely. So the business grew from, basically it was $0. I mean, when as you heard, and
Negative $0, really. Like the way
right,
we got into it,
exactly,
it wasn't even big.
negative,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So the business grew from 0 to $12 million in a decade. And it grew from having no commercial real estate, right? No building. We used to lease the where we practice in. Now it has a building. It has a 7,000 square feet building with 14 dental chairs that hosts a team of about 30 people, and sees about 400 new patients on a monthly basis.
Incredible.
Yes.
Incredible, Sahira.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is open Monday through Saturday, 7 to 7.
Yeah.
It caters almost retail hours.
Yeah.
And the reason we're able to do that is because of the amount of team members. So there's the burnout, because some people are like, oh my gosh, but how am I going to convince people to work on Saturdays?
Yeah.
They don't have to work every Saturday a month. And if you give them an enough big why do we do this? If you give back to the community, and if you're able to have the team that has been there, that foundation team, have them share constantly their growth and their stories, people are way more than willing to work on a Saturday than not, because of that why, because it becomes more of a, I want to serve. Yes, I want to be here on Saturdays. We used to host, and they still do, a free day of dentistry. And the first year, I'll never forget the first year we hosted that free dentistry day. We had 300 people showed up, and they started lining up outside at midnight. And this was December, and we were in Florida, so it's not, it's not
Still
crazy,
low, it's cold.
but it's still cold. It's still
Yeah.
cold.
Yeah.
And and what most surprised me, because obviously my heart was, I wanted to do this. I wanted to do a day of free dentistry, whatever it cost. We were going to use all of our resources, our team, everything. And it was something in my heart that we wanted to do. But the team didn't have to, right? The team wasn't, they didn't really have to do it. But their reaction was what most amazed me. Because that day for them was so special that it is one of the most told stories in the culture of the business. So it's not the day that we broke record.
Right.
It's not the day that we hit the highest month. It's not the day that we hit the highest year, or that we saw the most new patients. It was the day that we opened up to serve others for free.
I love it. Yeah. And I I think that's a great lesson too, which is, as the owner, I'm sure internally you celebrate, highest revenue or profit months as the owner, but most of your team, they're not as connected to, that as being the thing. It's not, I think that's a really important lesson on culture too, of building culture and setting values, right? Creating values. What do we value as a company, as a team? And do we back that up with behavior? Do we show that through our behavior? Or do we just talk about it and we don't take actions? I think that's so powerful. And I love that story of, it's like taking a risk on something that's not necessarily financially going to give you a return, per se, but it's going to get buy-in for people. And I think, Sahira, at some point, I'd love to have you back on just to talk about employee retention and creating, initiatives to keep employees happy, or to even figure out, initial starting points of basic principles of what to keep in mind for those kind of things. I'm super grateful for your times here, and I just want to wrap up with a couple of things here. First off, I'd love to ask, because you are a profit coach now, you're helping, you're part of our team, but I'd love to know, when you were in, what did your financial, I'd love to kind of know, what were your financial habits as a business owner early on, and then by the time you were, later on in as you were hitting record highs in your business and all of that, what were your financial habits like, in terms of, I don't know if you could give us an insight onto, were you weekly checking certain things? Was it a more of a monthly, hey, I checked in with this and I had people I reported to, like my accountant or other stuff? What was that like in the beginning? And then what was that like as you grew?
So at the beginning, it was messy, because we did not know what we were doing.
Yeah. QuickBooks didn't solve it all for you, right?
Yes. And we learned big lessons by not having straight financials. And I can't, I quickly learned that having the accounting done is the spiritual foundation for prosper,
Yeah.
for a successful business.
Yeah.
I cannot relate this enough. I mean, knowing the finances, and this is not about, I think sometimes there could be the perception of, oh, you pay too much attention to money, you just have rich mentality thinking, and or
Right.
you know, or just, you know, profit is all. Well, it is. It has to be.
Sure.
If you have a business, your main role as the business owner is to steward the assets, all of the assets of that business with fierce intensity.
Mm.
That is your number one role as a business owner.
Yeah.
To steward all the assets of that business with fierce intensity. And the only way we do that, Will, is by having clear accounting. So at the beginning, it was a mess. Then we did a couple of coaching. I don't know if you've ever heard of Dave Ramsey.
Oh yeah.
Big supporter of his mindset about, you know, being very debt adverse and really being careful with how you're going to get into debt. And then we were really looking at financials on a daily basis. On a daily basis, we had established percentages of what was going to be. So basically the income would come in, and then we had percentages of what was going where. So we had a tax bucket, we had a profit bucket, we had a financial freedom bucket, we had a emergency bucket, and we would break the income by percentage into those buckets, and we would do that on a daily basis, which is quite heavy.
Yeah.
But
I mean, if you're doing that volume though, I mean, you know, if a mishap could be significant, right? Like, you gotta, I'm curious, was that a morning task? Was that an end of day?
That was a morning task.
That was a morning
task. So every morning on my cell phone, I would get an end of day report of what happened, of what were the gross revenues, what was basically the itemized deposit to the bank. And from that, I would take on the percentages towards the different accounts.
So in the morning from the day before, the morning after, you're getting that, and then I'm assuming all that like hits your account, right? And then you're actively manually divvying into where it needs to go. Cool. I think it's really cool to see. I think I think there's some of the business owners we talk to at times. Yeah, I think there's a big, and Alex and I were there when we started this, was like, I remember asking, can we just outsource like these things, right? And it's just the thing that like no one can tell you where to put money, right? So I guess in theory someone could, but you're at the mercy of where someone else dictates where if you just follow blindly. It's like one of those things where you're like, if you have a garden and you have water, like you have to choose where are you going to put water, like, and you need to understand each plant to know, like, if you give so much water to a plant that literally only needs, you know, a few drops, and that's all it needs. In fact, it does worse with more water. You're killing things without even knowing what you're doing. And so I just think it's a really cool thing to hear that you are that involved every day going through. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm sure at that level it's probably fun on some degree when you have that much, you know, coming through and that kind of stuff. But I just think that's a really great thing. I think it's also a great kind of just way to wrap this up of about discipline, about habits, about being focused on it and intentional with that. So here, one of the things I'd love to just kind of ask you as a last question is, what would you say to your younger self? So now we have wise, experienced Sahira, always still learning and growing, but has gone through all of this. If you could go back and meet Sahira of 2008, you know, what would you tell her? I think we have a lot of business owners who are in the midst of just, you know, the highs and lows, right? It's a roller coaster all the time. And there'll be plenty who are listening to this at a moment of like, is this all worth it? You know, what would you tell your younger self knowing kind of what you know now?
I would say the top three things would be to be faithful, be authentic to yourself, and never lose that in the journey, because crisis will always test you. Crisis will test two things. Crisis will test your faith, and a crisis will test your authenticity.
Yeah.
And that is something that every business owner should probably have in black and white. And in moments of crisis, you should pull it out. Basically, I call them these rules never get broken.
Yeah, the non-negotiables.
These are the non-negotiables, because crisis can sometimes play with our minds, and our minds can be our biggest enemy. And nothing is worth losing your faith or yourself. Nothing.
Love that. Yeah.
So I think that would be the biggest thing I would say.
Yeah, I love that. And if you're in it long enough, there will be crises that come, whether and sometimes it looks different for every business too. Some things are easier for other people to tolerate, and vice versa. Some things are harder. And I really love this. And so here I just have to say, I'm so I'm so honored that we get to work together. I think you have built such, your business acumen is incredible. You've built such an incredible practice, and more importantly, the way you've taken care of people is amazing. And I'd love to just sort of wrap up with, so if anyone wants to learn more about you, if they'd like to reach out to you or follow you in any way, the answer could be no if you don't. But if there is there any way that people could connect with you if they want to reach out? You also do some private consulting on the side as well. Yeah, please let our listeners know where they can find you.
Yeah, I would say go to our website, ceofinanceacademy.com. Send us an email, and we'd be happy to help you. And if we're not the right fit, it's always great. I've never met any stranger. There's only friends to know out there. So we might not be the right fit for every business owner out there, but I'm happy to talk and have a conversation about it, at least, and give you maybe some guidance or opinions of what should your next step be.
Yeah. And I should mention, if you're reading a book somewhere and you're tired of reading the book, there's a good chance you could email Sahira. She may have already taken notes on that book and might have them saved somewhere for you to save you some time. So Sahira, thank you so much for taking time to be on the show. And anybody else who's listening, hopefully we'll catch you on the next episode of the Building Better Business podcast. Take care, everyone.
Bye.